after 50 years of marriage, while cleaning up the mess for my grandson's cat. I accidentally unearthed my husband's dusty photo album. I thought it was a record of our children and grandchildren growing up, but I was shocked to see annual travel photos of him and his first love, from their youth to old age, for a full 25 years. The shirt he wore last year when he was supposedly on a business trip was clearly visible. So, the so-called academic lectures were his unwavering annual rendezvous with his old flame. 50 years of mutual support turned out to be a meticulously planned, long-term deception. The weekend sun shines through the blinds, cutting alternating stripes of light and shadow on the floor. The air is filled with the scent of cat food and a faint smell of disinfectant. I, Ava, a self-proclaimed old woman with a calm and uneventful life, am fulfilling my promise to my grandson Leo, taking care of his ragdoll cat named General and tidying up the guest room in my son Daniel's house, which hasn't been thoroughly cleaned in a long time. General lazily lies on the windowsill, completely ignoring my diligent figure. I roll up my sleeves and push the vacuum cleaner under the bed. A slight bumping sound occurs, and the vacuum cleaner nozzle seems to be stuck on something. I bend down, using the light from the window, and drag a dusty wooden box from under the bed. The box has no lock, only a thick layer of dust. I patted it, opened the lid, and inside was a thick photo album. The cover is dark brown leather, and the corners are worn, giving off an old-fashioned atmosphere. I smiled to myself, thinking it was probably Daniel's childhood or Leo's growth album. Forgotten here. Daniel's family just went on vacation, so I might as well sort it out and give them a surprise when they come back. Casually flipping open the first page, my smile froze on my face. The background of the photo is a sunny beach, with two young people snuggled together, smiling brightly. The man is handsome, wearing a white shirt, and is my very familiar husband, Ethan. At that time, his hair was black, and his eyes were filled with the sharpness of a young man and his yearning for the future. But the smiling girl beside him is not me. She has seaweed-like long curly hair, wearing a floral dress, nestled in Ethan's arms, her eyes full of undisguised adoration. In the lower right corner of the photo, the date is marked in a delicate font, 1998. Summer. My heart sank suddenly, as if gripped by an invisible hand. This wasn't Daniel, and it certainly wasn't Leo. I trembled as I continued to scroll down. The second photo featured a snow-capped mountain in the background. The two of them were wearing thick down jackets, their cheeks red with cold, but they were smiling exceptionally happily. Ethan's scarf was the one I knitted myself. He said he was going to the north to attend an important academic conference. Date, 1999. Winter. The third photo was of an ancient town, with cobblestone streets, small bridges, and flowing water. The two of them were holding an oil paper umbrella, and Ethan was looking at the woman beside him, his eyes so gentle they could drip water. Date, 2000. Spring. The fourth one is a street scene with exotic flair, with uniquely styled buildings in the background. They are sitting at an outdoor cafe, with 2 cups of coffee on the table. Date, autumn, 2001. Page after page, year after year, from 1998 to 2023, a full 25 years. A group photo every year, without interruption. The backgrounds in the photos change, from beaches to snow-capped mountains, from ancient towns to metropolises, from domestic to foreign. The people in the photos also change. Ethan's hair gradually turns frosty white, the wrinkles around his eyes deepen. The woman beside him loses her youthfulness and gains charm, and later, like me, she also has white hair. The only constant is their annual trip and the almost unchanging intimate posture and eye contact in the photos. Together, they went from youthful black hair to white hair, staying together for a quarter of a century in such a secretive and resolute way. There isn't a single photo of me, or Daniel or Leo, in the album. This thick album only records 25 years of Ethan and that strange woman. My mind went blank, buzzing, my blood felt frozen, yet also like it was rushing wildly through my veins, pounding in my temples. I recognized the handwriting beneath the date on the photo. It was Ethan's. That slightly sharp script. I had looked at it for 50 years, familiar enough to trace with my eyes closed. Turning to the last page, there was a photo from last year. The background was a resort hotel on some tropical island. Ethan was wearing a light blue linen shirt, with his arm around that woman. They were both wearing sunglasses, smiling easily. That shirt. My stomach clenched violently, a wave of nausea rising in my throat. Last summer, Ethan said he was going to California for a week-long economics seminar. Before he left, I specifically ironed this light blue shirt for him, reminding him that the weather there was hot, and linen was breathable. He smiled and agreed, saying the seminar was important, the partners were of high caliber, and he needed to maintain a good image. So, it wasn't the seminar that was important, but the woman beside him. The so-called business trips, lectures, and academic conferences were just elaborate lies he carefully wove to conceal his annual rendezvous with his first love. I'm almost certain the woman in the photo is Olivia, his unforgettable first love from his youth. For 25 years, over 9,000 days and nights, he has brazenly shared time that should have belonged to us as a couple with another woman, right under my nose. What I thought was a life of mutual support and peaceful existence was nothing more than a lifelong betrayal I was completely unaware of. My marriage, the family I dedicated my whole life to, was rotten from the very foundation, built on a massive lie, anger, humiliation, disgust, and a cold despair of being utterly fooled, like countless sharp icicles, stabbed fiercely into my heart, hurting me so much that I could hardly breathe. I collapsed on the cold floor, holding the heavy photo album, my body shaking uncontrollably. Tears surged out unexpectedly, blurring my vision and burning my skin. General seemed to sense my abnormality, jumped off the windowsill, and rubbed my arm with its furry head, making a low meow sound. I stroked its soft fur, but felt no comfort at all. Even a cat knows how to cuddle and offer companionship, but my husband, who shared my bed for 50 years, used the cruelest way to crush my trust and dedication to pieces. I don't know how long it had been when the phone in my pocket rang, Ethan's name flashing on the screen. I took a deep breath, roughly wiped the tears from my face with the back of my hand, and tried to make my voice sound normal. Hello, Ava, are you done with Daniel? Dinner's almost ready. When are you coming back? Ethan's voice was as gentle as ever, with a hint of subtle urging. Dinner? He could actually prepare dinner as if nothing had happened. Looking forward to me coming home? Imagining him perhaps wearing the apron I bought him, busy in the kitchen, and maybe still savoring the next trip with Olivia. I felt a wave of nausea. I'll be back. I managed to spit out 2 words, quickly hung up the phone, afraid that if I heard his voice for another second, I would collapse on the spot. I put the photo album back into the wooden box, closed the lid, and then, like holding a Pandora's box, I held it tightly in my arms and left Daniel's house. The road home became exceptionally long. I walked mechanically like a wandering soul, the scenes in the photo album repeatedly playing in my mind, as well as the details before and after each of Ethan's business trips over the past 25 years. Those reasons I once firmly believed in have now become evidence exposing the lies. He said the meetings were boring, but in reality, it was the fatigue of the journey. He said jet lag was difficult, but in reality, it was the exhaustion after intimacy. He said the local specialties he brought back were gifts from partners, but now that I think about it, I'm afraid he and Olivia picked them out together, right? How ridiculous, how ironic. Pushing open the door to our home, the aroma of food wafted over me. Ethan was bringing the last dish to the table, and when he saw me, he gave me his usual smile. You're back? Go wash your hands and come eat. I made your favorite lemon sea base today. Looking at the smile on his face, one that I knew so well, I only felt an immense sense of unfamiliarity and hypocrisy. How many years of deceit were hidden behind that smile? I didn't move, just stood in the entryway, staring fixedly at him. Ethan seemed to notice my odd behavior, and the smile on his face faded slightly. What's wrong? You don't look so good. Are you tired? He came over and wanted to touch my forehead. I suddenly took a step back, avoiding his touch. This action caused the air to freeze instantly. Ethan's hand froze in midair, a hint of doubt and confusion flashing in his eyes. Ava? I placed the wooden box in my arms heavily on the shoe cabinet in the entryway, making a muffled thump sound. What is this? Ethan frowned. I raised my eyes to meet his gaze, my voice trembling slightly because I was suppressing immense emotion. Ethan, you're going to lecture again next week, aren't you? He was taken aback for a moment, then nodded. Yes, I told you before, going to Seattle, an internal exchange invited by a well-established technology company, for about 4 or 5 days. His tone was light, as if he didn't understand why I suddenly brought this up. Just lecturing? My voice suddenly rose, with a sharpness that even I hadn't anticipated. Really just lecturing? Ethan's relaxed expression vanished. replaced by an offended displeasure and wariness. He looked at me, then at the wooden box, his eyes becoming complex. Ava, what exactly are you trying to say? What else could my lectures be? I stared intently into his eyes, trying to find even the slightest hint of guilt or shame, but all I saw was evasiveness and a faint hint of annoyance. My heart sank completely, even the last glimmer of hope shattered. I took a deep breath, abruptly opened the wooden box, took out the photo album, and slammed it hard onto the dining table in front of him. The album opened to the photo from last year on that tropical island. Look at it yourself. This is your lecturing for the past 25 years. Ethan, tell me, what is this? My voice was hoarse with emotion, and tears streamed down my face again uncontrollably. Ethan's gaze fell on the photo, and his pupils suddenly contracted. The color drained from his face instantly, turning it ashen white. He looked at the photo in disbelief, then abruptly looked up at me, his eyes filled with shock and panic. How did you get this? His voice was dry. I found it at Daniel's house, in the box you hid under the bed. Seeing his panicked appearance, what surged in my heart was not the pleasure of revenge, but deeper sorrow and anger. Ethan, what do you have to say? 25 years. You and Olivia. Once a year. What did you take me for? An idiot? Ethan's panic lasted only a few seconds, quickly replaced by a sense of angry embarrassment. He snatched the album back, slamming it shut with a smack, clutching it tightly in his hand as if it were the shackles that proved his guilt. What nonsense are you talking about? He roared, trying to sound tough but lacking conviction. Olivia? Just an old classmate. We're all getting older, so what's wrong with going on a trip together now and then to reminisce about our youth? Old classmate? I almost laughed at his shamelessness. Are there old classmates who take pictures together, embracing, for 25 years? Are there old classmates you regularly go on business trips to meet with every year? Ethan, how long are you going to keep lying to me? I think you're being completely unreasonable. Seeing that his explanations were useless, Ethan simply gave up trying to justify himself. He grabbed the album, pointed it at me, and angrily rebuked. I work hard to support the family, so what's wrong with relaxing once in a while? You just become suspicious, making mountains out of molehills. It's completely unreasonable. Having said that, he didn't look at me anymore. He grabbed his coat and car keys, yanked the door open, and rushed out without looking back. With a loud bang, the door was slammed shut, shaking the walls and completely shattering the last bit of warmth in my heart. In the empty living room, I was the only one left, facing a table of gradually cooling food and a heart wounded beyond repair. The Cold War had begun. In the following days, the air in the house seemed to freeze. After Ethan stormed out, he didn't come back that night. He returned the next day, but there was an invisible wall between us. He no longer took the initiative to talk to me, and I couldn't be bothered to look at him. In the past, I took care of all his needs: clothing, food, housing, and transportation. I knew exactly which of his shirts needed ironing, what strength of coffee he preferred, and where he kept his usual medicine. But now, I don't care about anything. I turn a blind eye to the dirty clothes piled in the laundry basket. There's only a portion for me at the breakfast table. He can only rummage through the kitchen for bread himself. He can't find his usual documents and paces anxiously in the study, but I turn a deaf ear. In this home, the part that belongs to him is becoming chaotic and disorderly at a speed visible to the naked eye, and I, like a cold bystander, am watching all of this happen. Ethan is clearly very uncomfortable with this change. He tried to speak several times, seemingly wanting to ease the relationship, but seeing my cold eyes, he swallowed back the words. He probably still holds that ridiculous fantasy, thinking that I'm just angry for a while, and after a few days, I will take the initiative to reconcile like after countless previous quarrels, and then everything will be as before. He's wrong. This time, it's different. Some things, once broken, can never be restored. A week later, my son Daniel and his family returned from their trip. Ethan probably talked to them in advance, or rather, complained. The second night after they came back, they came to the door with his wife Sophia and grandson Leo. As soon as he entered the door, Daniel frowned, his tone carrying obvious disapproval. "Mom, what's going on with you and Dad? We just got back and heard you're in a Cold War. Dad says you're making a fuss over some old photos of old classmates. Isn't that a bit much?" Before I could speak, my daughter-in-law Sophia interjected. "Yeah, Mom, Dad's getting old. It's normal to have some friends from the past. I've heard of Aunt Olivia too." Dad's classmate from when he was young. I heard she's a very nice and reasonable person. Dad says it's just a misunderstanding. Don't take it too seriously. Aunt Olivia? Reasonable? I couldn't believe my ears. They're calling the woman who destroyed my family and entangled with my husband for 25 years aunt, and praising her as reasonable? My heart felt like it was soaking in ice water, growing colder and harder bit by bit. I looked at my son, the son I raised with my own hands, the son I once thought would always be on my side, but now he was completely on his father's side, looking at me with a "you're making a big deal out of nothing and you're being unreasonable" look. Misunderstanding? I sneered and pointed at Ethan. Ask him, is that a misunderstanding? 25 years. A trip every year. Is that what you call an /old classmate /? Is that what you call /understanding /? Ethan's face turned pale, his eyes darting around, afraid to look at me, but Daniel didn't seem to notice his father's guilty conscience. Instead, he intensified his tone and said, Mom, Dad already explained. It's just an old classmate reunion to reminisce. Why are you still harping on it? Dad has worked hard for this family his whole life. Can't you be considerate of him? As for Aunt Olivia, Dad also said that they're just ordinary friends. You're being so aggressive. It's making it difficult for Dad. Aggressive? I'm being aggressive? And that mistress has become the victim? An indescribable sense of sorrow, indignation, and absurdity welled up in my heart. I looked at this filial son and daughter-in-law, who were not concerned about their mother's pain of betrayal, but rather about their father's difficult position, and whether that understanding mistress would feel wronged. That evening, I happened to have made Daniel's favorite braised pork. I silently stood up, walked to the dining table, picked up the steaming plate of braised pork, walked to the kitchen, and in front of them, dumped the entire plate of meat into the trash can. Mom, what are you doing? Daniel exclaimed in shock, his face filled with disbelief and anger. I turned around and looked at him calmly. Since you think I'm making a fuss and not being considerate of your father, then there's no need to eat this meal. I'm afraid what I make is not worthy of you understanding people. You are simply unreasonable. Daniel was so angry that his face turned red and his neck became thick. He pulled Sophia and Leo up. Let's go. Let her go crazy here alone. Walking to the door, he stopped again, turned back to look at me, his eyes cold, and said word by word, Mom, if you continue like this, you will only push Dad away completely. Don't blame us for not reminding you when that happens. After saying that, he slammed the door shut and left with his wife and children. This time, even the sound of the door being slammed seemed so pale and weak. I stood in the empty kitchen, looking at the pile of greasy braised pork in the trash can, and suddenly felt very tired, very tired. This home that I had run for a lifetime, this place that I thought was a safe haven, had long become a huge, suffocating cage. Late that night, I lay in bed, tossing and turning. Ethan probably couldn't sleep either, pacing back and forth in the living room. Then, I heard the washing machine start, followed by a few clumsy bumps and low curses. After a long time, the bedroom door was gently pushed open a crack. Ethan poked his head in, with an expression on his face that was a mix of exhaustion, appeasement, and clumsiness / Ava, I think I put too much laundry detergent in. The foam overflowed. He was like a child who had done something wrong, trying to show weakness to me in this way, seeking reconciliation. If it were in the past, I might have softened, gotten up to help him clean up the mess, and then taken the opportunity to end the Cold War. But now, I looked at him, at this man I had loved and resented for a lifetime, at the white hair at his temples, at the tired marks on his face left by years of desk work, and my heart was unusually calm. I slowly sat up, looked into his eyes, and said clearly and calmly, Ethan, let's break up. Ethan's expression froze instantly, as if he had heard something utterly absurd. He paused for a few seconds before asking in disbelief, What did you say? I said, let's break up. I repeated, my tone without the slightest ripple. Divorce. Ethan's face completely changed. He rushed to the bedside, his voice trembling with agitation. Ava, don't be ridiculous. You want to divorce me over some old history? We're not getting any younger. Is there anything we can't get through? Old news? I looked at him, my eyes full of sarcasm. Ethan, this is 25 years of deception and betrayal, not just a day or two, but over 9,000 days and nights. When you and Olivia were enjoying yourselves, did you ever think about me taking care of the household chores, looking after the elderly and children all alone at home? When you wore the shirts I ironed for you to go on dates with her, did you feel even a tinge of guilt? And now you're telling me this is /old news /? This is /a small matter /? My voice wasn't loud, but every word struck Ethan's heart like a whip. He opened his mouth, wanting to defend himself, but in the end, he couldn't say anything, his face ashen. I'm not throwing a tantrum, Ethan. I looked at him calmly. I'm serious. 50 years is enough. I'm tired, and I don't want to keep guarding a marriage full of lies, playing a self-deceiving fool anymore. At that moment, all the past events flashed through my mind like movie scenes. Ethan and I met through a matchmaking arrangement. He was a promising young scholar at the time, and I was just a girl from an ordinary family. We didn't have a passionate love affair, and our life after marriage wasn't always smooth sailing. We went through the hardships of starting a business together, survived the most difficult economic times together, and raised Daniel to adulthood together. I thought we were partners weathering the storm together, family members helping each other in difficult times. I remember, in the early days of our marriage, Ethan confessed to me that he had an unforgettable first love named Olivia. He said that it was in the past and that he would live a good life with me. I believed him. For this family, I quit my job and became a full-time housewife, taking care of his daily life, respecting his parents, and raising our son to be successful. I thought my dedication and forbearance would be rewarded with a stable and happy old age. Now it seems so ridiculous. His so-called confession to me was just to alleviate his own guilt, to more comfortably enjoy my care, while maintaining uninterrupted contact with his past. Separate, Ethan murmured, repeating these two words, his eyes vacant, as if unable to accept this reality. Ava, we have children, grandchildren, 50 years of relationship. Relationship? I interrupted him. What kind of relationship can tolerate 25 years of betrayal? Ethan, stop deceiving yourself. Let me go. And let yourself go too. I made up my mind to get a divorce. The next day, I started sorting out our joint property, the house, savings, stocks, funds. I listed them one by one, preparing to divide them with him. Ethan didn't seem to be able to accept this fact. He was distraught and ignored my actions of dividing the property, only repeating, think about it again, Ava, give me one more chance. A chance? I gave him 50 years. Did he cherish it? I ignored his pleas and started packing my things, preparing to move out. I contacted a lawyer and drafted a divorce agreement. My attitude was firm and calm, and Ethan finally realized that I was not kidding. Daniel learned of my impending divorce and called again, his tone full of accusations and incomprehension. Mom, how can you do this? Dad has already apologized to you. Why do you still want a divorce? Can't you just endure it for the sake of our family? For Leo? Are you only satisfied when the family is ruined? Home? I retorted. Is a home built on lies and betrayal worth longing for? Daniel, I am your mother, not a tool to sacrifice my dignity and feelings just to maintain superficial peace. You are being completely selfish. Have you thought about Dad? He's so old. What are you going to do with him? He has you, Sophia, and his understanding Aunt Olivia. My tone was calm, but with a hint of subtle sarcasm. There was silence on the other end of the phone for a few seconds. Then Daniel's exasperated voice, Mom, how can you say that? You disappoint me so much. Disappointed? How could I not be disappointed in him? I couldn't be bothered to argue with him anymore and hung up the phone. Then, I blocked his number and Sophia's. I needed peace and quiet, space to sort out this mess. Instead of listening to them standing on moral high ground and accusing me, I quickly found a house and moved out, leaving the home I had lived in for nearly 50 years. I didn't feel much nostalgia, but rather a sense of relief and liberation. I started planning my new life. Hobbies I gave up in my youth for the sake of family, I can now pick up again. I signed up for piano lessons and started learning this instrument that I had longed for so long. I'm also planning to travel, to see the scenery in Ethan and Olivia's photos, but this time, for myself. I started sharing my new life on Facebook and Instagram, short videos of practicing piano, landscape photos taken while traveling alone, group photos of drinking coffee with new friends. My social media platform is no longer centered around family and husband, but is full of my own colors. I noticed that Ethan quietly followed my account and liked every post I made. I don't know what his mentality is. Maybe it's guilt, maybe it's regret, or maybe it's just a habitual peak. But none of this has anything to do with me. Just when I thought life could start over peacefully like this, an uninvited guest came to my door. That day, I had just returned from my piano lesson, and downstairs in the apartment building, a well-dressed and elegant woman of the same age stopped me. She was well-maintained, and although she had some gray hair, her eyes carried a sense of superiority from being in a high position for a long time. "Are you Ava?" she said, her voice gentle, but with a subtle scrutiny. I looked at her, vaguely guessing her identity. That face, though aged, gradually overlapped with the girl in the photo album. "I am. May I ask who you are?" I pretended not to recognize her. "I'm Olivia." She slightly raised her chin, revealing a self-satisfied smile. "I think we need to talk." As expected, it was her. I looked at her, and there was no anger in my heart, only a sense of absurdity. This woman who had entangled with my husband for half his life had finally lost her patience and come to my door herself. "What is there to talk about?" I said in a flat tone. "Ethan and I are going through divorce proceedings, and our affairs don't seem to concern you." Olivia seemed not to expect this reaction from me and was stunned for a moment, then regained her elegant demeanor. "Ava, I know you /re angry, but the situation between Ethan and me is complicated. We are soulmates, but reality prevents us from being together. Marriage and love can sometimes be separate." Single quote. She tried to rationalize her relationship with Ethan, even elevating it to the level of soulmates. Her words filled with disdain for me and my marriage, as if I were just a worldly woman who didn't understand love and only knew about mundane matters. Looking at her pretentious appearance, I suddenly found it very funny. "Soulmate?" I raised an eyebrow, a mocking curve appearing at the corner of my lips. "Ms. Olivia, you probably misunderstood something. In my opinion, you are nothing more than a homewrecker, a so-called mistress." "Oh, no." I sized her up and down, deliberately drawing out my tone. "Considering your age and how long you've been involved, it would be more appropriate to call you an old mistress. At least a mistress has the hope of becoming legitimate. But you, an old mistress who has aged out of the mistress role, what are you after? His old age? The fact that he doesn't shower?" I used an internet meme that ridiculed mistresses, my tone undisguisedly mocking. The elegance on Olivia's face instantly cracked, and her complexion turned rather unsightly. "You, how can you say such awful things? The truth is always hard to hear." I folded my arms, watching her leisurely. "You came to me today simply because Ethan hasn't been seeing you lately. You're anxious and want to come here to get information and, by the way, assert your ownership, right?" Ethan was overwhelmed by the divorce, so naturally, he wasn't in the mood to keep any annual appointment. Come to think of it, it was about the time they usually went on their trip. It seems this soulmate couldn't wait any longer. "You're talking nonsense." Olivia was stung by my words and became somewhat exasperated. "Ethan loves me. He's only with you out of responsibility." "Responsibility?" I laughed. "That must have been hard on him, bearing that responsibility for 50 years. But it's all right now. I've set him free, and you can rightfully have your love. You should be thanking me, shouldn't you?" Olivia was rendered speechless by my words, her face turning green and white. She probably thought I would cry or accuse her like a resentful woman, but she didn't expect me to be so calm, even with a hint of mockery. Just then, a familiar figure appeared at the entrance of the apartment building. It was Ethan. He had obviously come to find me, but he didn't expect to run into Olivia here, and even less did he expect to hear our conversation just now. He stood there, his face pale, looking at Olivia and me with a complex expression. His lips moved, but he couldn't utter a single word. I looked at him, then at Olivia, and suddenly felt that this scene was incredibly ironic. Look. I nodded towards Olivia. "Your soulmate is here. You guys talk. I have something to do. I'll go upstairs first." I couldn't be bothered to argue with them anymore, so I turned around and walked into the elevator, leaving Olivia with an embarrassed expression and Ethan, pale-faced, looking at each other. The elevator doors slowly closed, isolating the farce outside. I knew this was just the beginning, and there would be more melodramatic things waiting for me, but I didn't care anymore. Not long after, Ethan came to me again. This time, he didn't mention Olivia, only repeatedly expressed his regret, trying to save our marriage. "Ava, I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. Give me one more chance, just one last time, okay? Let's start over." He looked haggard and his voice was pleading. I looked at him, and there were no ripples in my heart. Some mistakes cannot be erased with a simple "I know I was wrong." "Ethan," I said calmly, "there is no possibility of a fresh start between us. The thing you lack most in this life is responsibility. When you were young, you didn't dare to defy your family for Olivia and chose to marry me. After marriage, you didn't dare to refuse Olivia's entanglement for my sake and chose to deceive and conceal. Now that you've been discovered, you don't dare to bear the consequences of divorce. You just want to escape reality and maintain the status quo. You always choose the easiest path, and you always avoid true responsibility. You haven't truly been responsible to me, to Olivia, or even to yourself. My words were like a scalpel, precisely dissecting the cowardice and selfishness he had been trying to hide all along. Ethan's face turned even paler. He opened his mouth, wanting to refute, but found he couldn't argue. I'm not blaming you, I continued. I'm just stating a fact. The problem between us isn't an Olivia, it's you yourself. So, divorce is the best option. For you, and for me. Ethan looked at me, his eyes full of despair and pain. He probably never thought that I, who had always been gentle and tolerant, would be so resolute. In the end, he was silent. A few days later, we signed the divorce agreement. 50 years of marriage came to an end. The division of property went smoothly, and I received the part one deserved, neither more nor less. However, things didn't end there. Daniel called again, and this time, his was aimed directly at the property division. Mom, how could you take so much money? That's all Dad worked so hard to earn. The house should also be left to Dad. If you take half, how will he live in the future? His tone was full of anger and injustice. Daniel, I explained patiently, we are a legal couple, and marital property is divided equally, as stipulated by law. Moreover, your so-called Dad worked hard to earn it. Doesn't it have half of my contribution? For this family, I gave up my job, took care of the housework, and raised you. Are these efforts worthless in your eyes? Isn't that just what a nanny does? Daniel blurted out. These words, like a poisoned dagger, pierced my heart fiercely. A nanny? I dedicated my life to this family, and in his eyes, I was just a nanny? My heart is completely cold. I took a deep breath, suppressed the surging emotions, and my voice became icy and sharp. Daniel, since that's what you think, then I'll settle accounts with you. According to the market price, a full-time nanny, childcare worker, tutor, chef, and housekeeper, over 50 years. What do you think the salary and benefits would add up to? That doesn't even include the opportunity cost of giving up my personal career development. Taking half of the property is already a bargain for you. Also, I paused and continued, the house you live in now, the car you drive, the startup capital for your company, which one didn't use the joint property of me and your father? If I were to be serious, all of these could be recovered. You better think clearly, for the sake of your father's difficult position. Offending me, this nanny, is there any risk to your future inheritance of property? I rarely speak in such a harsh tone, but Daniel's words completely infuriated me. He probably didn't expect me to be so tough, and he was stunned for several seconds before angrily scolding, you're simply cold-blooded. For money, you don't even care about family ties. You were the first to disregard family ties. I replied coldly, and then hung up the phone. This time, I was truly disheartened. Not long after, something even more unexpected happened. Daniel actually posted a family photo on his Facebook. In the photo were him, Sophia, Leo, Ethan, and Olivia. The 5 of them were smiling and snuggling together, with Ethan and Olivia sitting in the middle, looking every bit like a loving couple. The caption read, "Time flies, but true love remains. Blessings to Dad and Aunt Olivia." As soon as this status was posted, it immediately attracted likes and blessings from many friends and relatives, praising Ethan and Olivia as true love that broke through secular conventions and a model of unwavering devotion for decades. Looking at that glaring photo and the blessing comments below, I felt utterly absurd. To justify Ethan and Olivia's relationship, they didn't hesitate to distort the truth and completely erase me, the original wife. However, the internet has a memory. Soon, well-informed friends and relatives raised questions in the comments section. Wasn't Ethan with Ava? When did they get divorced? Immediately after, more discordant voices emerged. Some dug into Ethan's identity in academia, pointing out that he had presented himself as a model husband for many years. Others revealed that Olivia had also been married before and had not been single and waiting for Ethan all along. The direction of public opinion quickly reversed. The so-called love of the century instantly turned into a scandal of decades of mutual cheating. Ethan's image as a well-known scholar collapsed overnight. And he became a hypocrite and scumbag that everyone condemned. Daniel's Facebook status, which attempted to whitewash the situation, became the fuse that ignited public opinion, nailing him and his true love parents to the pillar of shame. The internet was filled with mockery and abuse towards them. This farce escalated to its peak in a way I had never anticipated. The pressure of public opinion, coupled with the contradictions in real life, quickly revealed the true nature of Ethan and Olivia's so-called true love. Olivia probably moved into the house Ethan and I used to live in, trying to play the role of the mistress of the house, but according to the sporadic news I heard later, she didn't have a good life. She was used to being served and was unwilling to take on housework at all. Sophia already had a grudge against this mother-in-law, and now she was even more dissatisfied, especially when it came to taking care of her grandson Leo. Olivia obviously lacked experience and patience, and once even almost lost the child, which made Sophia furious. Olivia felt that picking up and dropping off Leo from school was beneath her dignity and refused directly. The family was in chaos because of these things. As for Ethan, after experiencing the blow of his reputation being ruined, his mood also became very low. Between him and Olivia, there was no longer the excitement and romantic filter of past affairs. Only the trivialities of daily life and friction in their personalities remained. What made the relationship between the two even worse was that, in order to save her reputation, Olivia demanded that Ethan issue a statement falsely claiming that they had divorced a long time ago, but had not made it public for the sake of the children. That way, she would not be a mistress, but a legitimate partner. But Ethan refused, whether it was a shred of conscience or fear of being even more embarrassed after the lie was exposed. He refused to cooperate with Olivia in telling this lie. The two had a big fight over this, and their relationship dropped to freezing point. Just as this family drama was escalating, I received a call from Daniel. His voice sounded tired and anxious. Mom, Dad is sick and in the hospital. The doctor said it's a stroke. I was silent for a moment. Unexpected, yet somehow inevitable. The immense pressure from public opinion, the intensification of family conflicts, coupled with his old age, Ethan's body finally couldn't hold on. What do you want me to do? I asked. Can you come see him? Daniel's voice had a hint of pleading. He's not doing well, and he keeps calling your name. I hesitated for a moment. Logically, we are already divorced, and his affairs have nothing to do with me, but after all, we were husband and wife, and there's also our son Daniel in the middle. In the end, I agreed. The smell of disinfectant permeated the air in the hospital. Ethan lay on the hospital bed, his face ashen, and half of his body seemed unable to move. When he saw me come in, a glimmer of light flashed in his turbid eyes, and he struggled to speak. Ava. His voice was slurred, weak from his illness. I walked to the bedside, looked at his aged and haggard face, and my heart was filled with mixed emotions. You've come. He moved the corner of his mouth with difficulty, seeming to want to show a smile, but it looked incredibly bitter. I know. I'm sorry. I regret it now. It's too late. His intermittent words expressed his regret. He reached out with the hand that could still move, as if wanting to grab me. I didn't move, nor did I respond to his confession. He looked at me, his eyes full of hope and despair. Ava, do you, really, have no attachment to me at all? I met his gaze and calmly shook my head. Ethan, betrayal is betrayal. There is no way to forgive it. The 50 years we spent together were real, but the trust and feelings that you destroyed are also real. I can't pretend nothing happened and go back to the past. Let the past be the past. I will no longer be attached to it. My words were clear and calm, completely shattering his last ray of hope. Ethan's eyes dimmed, and he slowly closed them, 2 lines of turbid tears streaming down from the corners of his eyes. Outside the ward, I met Olivia. She looked much more haggard, her former elegance gone. She stopped me, a bleak smile on her face. Ava, I lost. I looked at her, saying nothing. Ethan, he would rather be ruined than lie for me. Her voice was full of bitterness and resentment. He said he had already lied to you for half his life and couldn't lie to everyone anymore. He said the person he was most sorry for was you. I always thought that what I had was his love, and what you had was just an empty shell of a marriage. Now it seems I was wrong. I've been busy for most of my life, and in the end, I got nothing. She laughed self-deprecatingly. I really lost completely. I looked at her, and there was no sense of triumph in my heart, only a deep weariness and sorrow. What you lost was perhaps what you thought was love, I said softly, and what I lost was my whole life. After speaking, I didn't look at her again and turned to leave the hospital. This farce that had lasted for decades had finally come to an end. After leaving the hospital, I completely left the past behind. I sold the property I had been allocated, exchanged it for a smaller apartment, and saved some of the remaining money for retirement, while using the rest to fulfill my youthful dreams. I continued to learn piano, my fingertips dancing on the black and white keys, playing a disjointed but hopeful movement. I started traveling alone, going to Provence, France to see the lavender fields, to the Swiss Alps for skiing, and to Tuscany, Italy to taste fine wine. I shared my travels and insights on social media, garnering many likes and encouragement from strangers. My old age life did not revolve around my husband and children and grandchildren, but was full of my own wonderfulness and freedom. Later, I heard that Ethan's stroke had left after effects, making it difficult for him to move, and his memory began to decline. He was eventually diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. He gradually forgot many people and things, and sometimes he didn't even recognize Daniel. But once, Sophia inadvertently showed him a video of me playing the piano. In the video, I was sitting by a sunny window, playing haltingly, but with a satisfied smile on my face. It is said that Ethan stared at the screen for a long time, and then suddenly burst into tears, murmuring my name. No one knows what he recalled at that moment in his chaotic memory. Perhaps it was my youthful longing for the future, perhaps it was my sacrifices that he ignored during our long marriage, or perhaps it was just an instinctive reaction to a familiar figure. But none of that matters to me anymore. At this moment, I am sitting on the beach of a small island in the South Pacific, watching the sunset paint the sky a brilliant orange red. The sea breeze is gentle, carrying a salty, humid scent. In the distance, I hear the melodious sound of a ukulele. I raise my cocktail, toasting this free sea, to this brand new me. The past is gone, the future is promising. I, Ava, have finally ushered in my own new life in the twilight years of my life.